over 250 million Gen Zs worldwide are struggling to find work, despite industries like healthcare, tech, and even pet care being on the rise. I know this because I've spent hundreds of hours applying to jobs, going through interviews, and researching how today's job market actually works. So what's really going on? And will you ever find a job in this climate? Well, firstly, let's look at some statistics. Then I'll go over the reasons why Gen Zs aren't getting hired, and then I'll finish off with some tips that you can implement right after this video. An article from earlier this year has mentioned that during the months of April to June, around 948,000 young people in the UK between the ages of 16 to 24 are not in education, employment, or training, also known as NEET. That's 25,000 more than the first quarter of this year, which means that nearly 1 in 7 young people in the UK are not in work or education. Moving to the US, that number was 2.5 million in July 2025, leading to a 10.8% unemployment rate. That's an increase of 690,000 from April. And worldwide, well, the International Labour Organization estimates 262 million young people are now NEET in 2025, roughly 1 in 4. As you can see, the numbers are increasing every single month, which is a massive concern, especially if you're unemployed and looking for a stable income. But the bigger question is, why is this happening? Why are there so many Gen Zs worldwide that are struggling to find work, even when industries are booming? Well, after doing some research, I found there to be 4 main reasons why this is the case. Let's start with understanding that the job market is very competitive. If you've been applying to jobs for some time now like I have, you'll notice that there are a crazy amount of people applying to the same job, hence leading to a lot of competition. For example, take a look at these jobs on LinkedIn, and you can see that more than 100 applicants have applied to them. So for you to be screened and chosen successfully to be even called for an interview is quite a low chance, which can be quite demotivating. And it's not just these individual postings that I've shown you. LinkedIn's own data shows that remote and hybrid roles are attracting 75% of all applications, even though they only make up about 20% of available listings. In other words, everyone is applying to the same pool of jobs, which makes the competition so much more intense. By the way, the job market never really used to be like this. In fact, this has become quite an issue in more recent years. One article mentions that in 2024, teams interviewed around 40% more candidates per hire for both business and technical roles than in 2021. So if you couple all of this with the changes that have been happening in the economy, companies are being a lot more selective with who they want to hire because they'll be investing a lot of time and money into them, hence why the selection process is so vigorous. So what does this mean for you, a job seeker? Well, you would have to be applying to a crazy number of jobs to increase your odds of being seen by a hiring manager, then be called for an interview. And for a lot of companies, there are multiple interview stages, which tends to add a lot of pressure. You'd also need to account for the possibility of failing interviews and using them to gain experience and going through the cycle multiple times, basically adding a lot of stress and heartache. My point in saying this is that there will be a lot of trial and error you will need to go through, and you will need time to build up good communication and technical skills that will help you to land a role in your respective areas. And while the market is competitive and is a huge challenge, your best chance to get hired is if you focus on closing the skills gap, which is what we will look at next. To stand out in a competitive market, you need to display a good level of knowledge and a set of skills. Nowadays, Gen Zs are missing both, and it's not entirely your fault. Unfortunately, getting a degree isn't really enough of an achievement anymore because it doesn't prove much to an employer. However, it used to 20 to 25 years ago because it was an indication that, you were a learned person, and back then degrees had a lot more value than it does today, and not many people had one. And as mentioned before, the market has had to adapt to a lot more people having degrees, and at this this point, you're just a dime a dozen and it's not enough to align you with the job description. Alongside this, another massive issue is the lack of experience, and this is something I've suffered from quite badly. You're at such a disadvantage if you haven't got proof that you have previously displayed the set of skills that you're talking about. There's a clear gap between education and the reality of employment, and unfortunately schools and universities don't really prepare you for the demands of the workplace, which leaves many young people like me and you unready for applying to jobs. Just to give you an example, here's a job for an entry-level position, and you can clearly see that they are asking for experience alongside skill sets. If you apply to a lot of other jobs, then you'll notice that this is quite a common occurrence. A survey was done on American young people between 18 to 24, showing that nearly 50% of them cited a lack of skills and experience as their main barriers to employment. Another article mentions that 35% of project managers says that Gen Zs lack advanced tech skills and struggles with core soft skills like communication. Essentially, not only are you competing with hundreds of different applicants for the same role, but you're a step behind and also expected to bring a certain skill set and experiences that a lot of Gen Zs just simply haven't had the chance to build up yet. Employers see that there's that skills gap, and that's a massive reason why so many young people just aren't landing roles. Okay, so if you've been watching up until this point, let me ask you this. How many jobs have you applied to and not heard a response from? Well, there's a big chance that you've been applying to ghost jobs. A problem that has popped up in recent years is that there have been numerous ghost jobs that have been listed on popular job boards, and I myself have called up a couple of companies that I applied through on LinkedIn only for them to tell me that they're not hiring for those positions. Now, according to a new report, 1 in 4 job listings on LinkedIn in the US are likely ghost jobs, which correlates closely to a study done from a university in New York, where 21% of job ads may be ghost jobs, which tend to be prevalent in specialized industries and larger firms. And this is likely the case in many countries around the world too. And you might be thinking, why the heck would they even do something like that? And I thought the same. Well, it turns out that companies use ghost jobs as a way to boost their reputation, because apparently it looks good that, they're hiring, and to the outside person, it appears that the company is flourishing, even though they know they aren't going to be hiring for those positions. Another reason they use ghost jobs is because they want to test the market for a particular position, and anyone who applies to those positions, they will save their details and they'll keep them in their pipeline for future needs. And honestly, it's a pretty sucky way to go about things, because for job seekers like me and you, you're not only applying to a crazy number of jobs, but your efforts are potentially going to waste, and it starts to impact your mental health because you start questioning whether you're even good enough to get a job. Whereas that might not even be the case. You've just been applying to fake job listings. The reality is that not every job that you see online is real. Ghost jobs have been diluting the market to make it seem bigger than it actually is, which means you're competing for fewer opportunities than you actually thought, and that's a huge reason why Gen Zs are feeling stuck. Let's move on to the last reason why Gen Zs are not getting hired, and that's due to advancements in AI and automation. Now, since the launch of ChatGPT and other AI platforms, companies have realized that a lot of work can be offloaded and automated if they start incorporating them in the workflows. And due to this, there have been a huge number of layoffs in recent years. For example, 27,000 tech job losses since 2023 in the US have been directly attributed to AI-driven redundancy. Plus, this gives companies incentive to save money, and implementing AI is the best choice for them, so sacking people isn't really much of an issue for them. And what else has AI affected? Well, it's the entry-level positions which me and you are trying to apply to, because companies have decided to make them a lot more difficult to get into. In the UK, the number of entry-level jobs has dropped by almost a third since the launch of ChatGPT, because companies want candidates who have a broad set of skills and knowledge and know how to use different AI tools. And if you don't provide this type of value to a company when you are applying to them, then simply you just won't be hired, because the bar to entry is just so so much higher now. At this point, you can see how all of the reasons are connected and how difficult it is for Gen Zs to kickstart their careers. I understand that the job market is brutal and unfortunately, you have no choice but to adapt. Now, I'm sure at this point you've been feeling so frustrated and would just like some tips on how you can stack the odds in your favor and try to land a role in this climate. Well, throughout my time of applying and learning more about the job market, though I wish I had all the answers, I will share some tips with you. The first one I would like you to do is take some time to do some upskilling. As tedious as it may be, taking time to upskill will put you ahead of the competition. It's just as simple as that. But there is a way you can challenge yourself. If you're willing to commit 90 days to upskilling, if you're in the position to do that, here's something you can try. And it's a post that I found on LinkedIn and I thought it was quite helpful. It's an example of how to land a tech role, but you can implement it within your respective area. Now, you have 90 days, split it into 3 sets of 30 days. The first 30 days you're going to be spending on building up foundations. In this case, you're picking up on some programming languages. The second 30 days, you'll spend time and put the foundations into practice, and you'll be doing projects with them. And the goal of these 30 days is to do as many of them as possible, and document what you have learned also. The final 30 days you will be spending time showcasing your work and networking with others. And my assumption is that this will be mainly happening on LinkedIn. Connect with other recruiters and find out what they are looking for. I haven't done this extensively, but there are other tips that you can find online on how to properly approach recruiters and ask them questions. This is all provided, by the way, that you are spending time alongside all of this applying to loads of jobs. And the more you apply, you will just have a better understanding of what the market is demanding from you, and it also gives you different ideas on what else you can improve on to make yourself as employable as possible. The second tip is to avoid applying to ghost jobs. Now, this might sound easier said than done since ghost jobs are riddled all over the place, but one thing you should do is when you're applying through LinkedIn or Indeed, instead of hitting the easy apply button, check to see if the same role is listed on the company's own website and apply through there. Because the chances of you being seen by the hiring manager is much higher since your application lands directly in the right inbox. And the thing to understand about all of this is that job boards, they're mainly middlemen, and your resume can easily be buried or forgotten. And honestly, it's been months since I've even applied to a job through LinkedIn and Indeed, because throughout my time of doing it, the quality of jobs on there are pretty crap. However, if you are still going to be applying through these job boards, be mindful of roles that have been listed for weeks on end or have been reposted by other people, because both might be signs that is a ghost job. Also, don't be afraid to follow up after a week or so to find out on your application, and in some cases you can actually get through to the person who was responsible for putting up that listing, and you can ask them questions, so use those chances to communicate your thoughts. From my experience, if you've been looking for tech specific roles, be mindful of agencies like Hunter Bond and Noir, because they often seem to spam on LinkedIn, so take those with a pinch of salt. Next, try and tailor your resume for each job. When you're going through job boards, don't just apply to every job that you see. Instead, try to go through the job description and match it as closely to your resume as possible. And if you notice something that is written in there that you haven't got, just make a note of it and take some time to learn it afterwards. Nowadays, companies use AI to screen candidates, so try to use buzzwords from the description in your resume to get that close match. You can just copy and paste the job description into ChatGPT and ask it to rewrite parts of your resume to match it. And of course, it's not entirely wrong to exaggerate certain experiences, so long you can back it up when you are called for an interview. Through this method, you may not be applying to a crazy amount of jobs, you're focusing more on quality over quantity. The next tip is to help you with communication skills, so I would strongly recommend you to network with others. Networking is a really great way to practice how to communicate your thoughts. Now, not only will you use it to try and land your job, but it also helps you to build your interpersonal skills, which nowadays is so important. LinkedIn is one way to network, but that's not really the same as speaking to someone in person. And you can't exactly meet up with every single hiring manager for every company that you've applied to. So what's an alternative? Well, that's where services like Eventbrite and the like come into play. There are many free events that take place on a monthly basis, and this provides you with a really great chance to broaden your horizons. Maybe there are some events that inspire you and make you lean into a specific industry some more. And there'll be plenty of opportunities to go and talk with other people who may be in a similar position to you. So use that as a chance to get out of your comfort zone and start practicing how to speak with others. Now, the next tip is for those of you who are eligible. So to you, consider going back into education. If after applying for a long time you just aren't getting the reception you were hoping for, then maybe going back into further education might benefit you. You can use the year to boost your communication skills, give yourself, experiences to write on your resume. And it's also an amazing route if you have had a long gap within your resume, because it also shows potential employers that you're quite dedicated to pursuing your career and doing further studying. And the advantage of all of this is that you will become eligible for graduate schemes, which tends to offer a lot more security when kickstarting your career. And the last tip I have to you is apply to a job center. Honestly, if you aren't bothered with chasing a career and you just want a job to make some money, which I know some of you may be in, then going to the job center might actually be an option. I provided more information in this video, you can take a look at it, but in short, once you're in, you will receive some allowance, and then the job center will provide you with quite a lot of opportunities to push you into work. So it's up to you to capitalize on those opportunities when they provide them to you. If you are someone who wants a career and has no money, you could still go through this route, and you could actually take it a step further, and any money that you get through the job center, you can invest it in a course or attend workshops that you can, use to develop your skills further to get into a career. Then all you need to do after your job is to manage your time and do the previous tips. So now you know why so many Gen Zs are struggling to find work, and more importantly, you know you're not alone, because this is a situation I have gone through for a while and it really sucks and plays on your mental health. Understand that everyone has a different path, but the small steps that you take will compound over time and hopefully will lead you to some success. So as hard as it may be, as tough as things get, try your best to not give up and keep pushing forward. I also go through some other experiences and advice on employment if you would like to take a look over here. Until the next time, do your best to keep your head up, and I wish you the best of luck.